Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this March 20th meeting of the Sustainability Commission of the City of Palm Springs. We are delighted that all of you are here this afternoon. And I have asked one of our newest commissioners, Carl Baker, to lead us in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dan, if you would lead us in the roll call, please.
Chair Jackson.
Present.
Vice Chair Clark.
Present.
Commissioner Baker.
Here.
Commissioner Friedman.
Here.
Commissioner Futterman.
Here.
Commissioner Gauthier.
Present.
Commissioner Goins.
Here.
Commissioner McCann.
Present.
Commissioner Spry.
Present.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
And Dara Shea.
Present.
T. Santora has excused absence. There is a quorum.
There is a quorum. The agenda was posted and emailed to commissioners per city regulations. Is there a motion that we accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Wilson and Baker. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed say no. And we have a pretty full agenda tonight, so we'll move through it. We'll come back and pick up any comments from staff in just a bit, since Jay's not here yet. Dara Shea, do you have anything you need or want to report to us tonight as our student representative from Palm Springs High?
Not tonight, but I just wanted to remind everyone to come to the March for Our Lives if you would like to on Saturday morning. I'm not exactly sure on the time, but you can probably find out that information on the Palm Springs High School Facebook page or website. So it'd be nice to see everyone here.
Yeah, this is the march that is in solidarity with students across the country related to the Marjorie Stoneman shooting, right? Yeah, okay, great. Thank you for letting us know about that. At each meeting of the Sustainability Commission, there is time for members of the public to address the commission on topics that are related to our area of responsibility within the city. So if you wish to come and speak in public comment, there is an open seat and a microphone that we can push on for you. There is a 3-minute time limit, and we ask that persons who do speak would give their name and their city of residence. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in public comment? Sure.
Good afternoon, Commission. Thank you for allowing me to address you. My name is Paul Henriksen. I'm from Palm Springs, California. Thank you for continuing to have on the agenda about smoking regulations in Palm Springs. Really pleased to see that it's on there, and we're here to answer questions as you may need. We have presented that there are 2 ordinances we're bringing forward towards this, to the city. One is Riverside County Ordinance, and it's called the Tobacco Retailer's Permit, or the TRP, and we're hoping that sustainability will look to producing a resolution of support for that ordinance. Secondly, a second ordinance, which is a city ordinance for smoking restrictions in the city of various types, and we're hoping that we can get a work group through sustainability and work on that and bring it forward to City Council to eventually pass it here in our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, well, see if I can, yes, that's just fine. I'm trying to make sure that I can get the start and stop. Aha, here we are.
Should be quick. Yeah,
okay,
that's
fine.
Hi, my name is Jim.
Your 3 minutes are starting. Welcome.
I'm Jim Flanagan. I'm a resident of Palm Springs, and I'm interested in bicycle issues. I took a very quick look at the agenda item for recommendations on Laverne Way, and I happen to live on Laverne Way. And I think the one thing that I would like to add is Laverne has a huge amount of multifamily dwelling on one end of it, and the other end of it is shopping. And so, I mean, I ride my bike all the time to Ralph's, and I think a lot of people, it's the one thing that wasn't on the list, is it's a way not just to service the loop of Palm Springs area and for leisure usage, but in transporting people between all the apartment buildings that are at the Palm Canyon end of Laverne and Smoke Tree on the other side. So if it's not too late to add that to the list of items, to, reasons to support keeping it a bicycle pathway, I'd like to add that in.
Okay, great.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in public comment? All right. Seeing none, we will declare public comment closed. I'm looking around. I don't know that there is any welcomes or new introductions we need to make tonight. Jay, I'll give you a chance to get settled, and we'll loop back in and pick you up. Why don't we move to our presentations? And our first presentation is from Celebrity Bike Rentals. Wish to come up there. There's one spot. If you guys can somehow share the microphone, that'd be great.
I guess we wouldn't have you sit. Do you mind if I go through the actual slides for her? That's fine. Yeah, sorry. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is George, and this is Daniela. We are the owners.
Not sure that's.
Hello?
Push.
Oh, push the button. Good evening, everyone. My name is George. Could you hear me? No?
We can hear you, but
I'll
it's a
speak
matter
louder.
of getting it on the recording as well.
Oh, it's
so.
record. Okay. Sorry about that. Hello? On American Idol.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how this works either.
Okay, it's blinking green now.
Well-
Does that mean it's recording if it's blinking green, or?
Don't know, but why don't we use the one on the floor?
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is George, and this is Daniela. We are the owners of Celebrity Bike Rentals. Oh, I didn't know what comes off, sorry. We are a bicycle rental business here that partners with hotels here in the desert. And we're here today to go ahead and talk to you guys about a bicycle share program that we want to implement into the city of Palm Springs here, which is called OWL. I'm going to go ahead and pass you over to Daniela. She's going to go ahead and touch bases on the actual app and give you guys a demonstration here.
I'm gonna sit because mine's longer. So let's do this. So as George mentioned, we're in the bicycle industry, and we've been so for the past 5 years. But we're here today to talk to you about OWL, which is a dockless bike share system that we are planning to launch. And what the system does, it allows the users to rent a bicycle virtually anywhere via a smartphone app. So we've put together a demonstration PowerPoint for you to kind of just walk you through what the process will look like from the renter's point of view. So this is OWL, and I'm going to reference my notes for these screens. So this first screen here that you're going to see pop up, this is a demo app, so it just has, this is where you would see OWL when you come into the system. And this is a registration screen, and it will allow the user to enter their name. They're creating an account right now. The sign up screen is where they'll enter their mobile number to register. And this is a verification screen which sends an authentication code to the user to authenticate them. And here's where they'll enter their email address and password when they're creating their account. And for our registered users, this is the login. So this is where they'll enter their mobile number and their password. And this entire process will be a one-time process where they'll sign up, just kind of like if you signed up for Lyft or Uber. You only do it one time. So this map screen, when they log in, they'll be able to see where all the bikes are and which bikes are nearest to the location they're currently at. And once the user has selected a bike, the screen will show the distance and time it'll take them to get to the bicycle. And they have the option of reserving the bicycle by selecting the reserve option. Once they do so, a timer will start, and that will indicate the time they have left before the bike is no longer available to them. But once they reserve it, no one else can use it until that time has expired. And this is where they'll enter the bicycle number to unlock the bicycle. And this next screen that's going to be popping up will show you that they could also unlock the bicycle by scanning the QR code. So once the trip is started, the timer screen will indicate the ride time, and the trip can be ended by either ending the ride or locking the bike by pressing that button you saw there. And this screen is a confirmation message, just letting the user know if they want to end the ride and lock the bike. So this screen right here, it's a ride summary screen, and it'll allow the user to view the summary of their ride and share their experience to social media, and it also let them rate the application. And this is where they can see their cumulative ride stats. They can see, you know, the average distance they traveled, how many calories they burn, and so forth. And this will let them view their entire ride history for every single ride they've taken. So this is one of the most important screens because it allows us to send offers to the user from local businesses in the community. And by marketing to our users, this is what's going to allow us to subsidize the cost of the bike share system. Right here, if the user experiences any type of difficulty with their bicycle or the ride in general, they can submit a ticket via this support screen directly to OWL, and we can address the issue immediately. So this is kind of a snapshot of our back office support system, and it will allow us to review all our bicycles in real time. We'll be able to track all bicycles, and if there's any issues, we can address it immediately. So what this is a geofence system. What this allows us to do is create a designated area for the user to ride the bike within. If they leave the geofence area, then they will incur a penalty fee for doing so. So our app will show our users virtual parking spots where they can park their bicycle upright upon completion of the ride. If they fail to park in any of the designated parking areas, then they will incur a penalty fee as well for not doing so. Sorry. And that's the basic sum of it. And thank you for your time and your interest in OWL. Do you guys have any questions?
Yes, commissioners, do you have questions of George and Danielle?
First of all, what's the cost?
Commissioner Baker? Yeah.
The cost to the customer?
Go ahead. Well, what we're doing is we haven't set a set price yet, but we don't intend for it to be expensive for the user. Like we said, we plan to really be able to run this bike share system through marketing. So that's what's going to allow us to subsidize the cost of the entire system.
Yeah, being that you know, Palm Springs is a very small city, most bike share companies are not eager to come into such a small city. They're looking for LA, all the big cities. So the way we're gonna, as Daniela said, subsidize the actual cost is through marketing or sponsorships or so. So that being said, we can bring the cost down for all the locals and residents, tourism, and all that.
Do you have a launch date at this point?
A launch date? Well, we're hoping within the next 3 months, but you know, we want to make sure that the city's on board with this. And if the city's on board with having a bike share system here, then from there we're going to actually now start approaching you know, different businesses for actual sponsors or marketing, and then from there we can actually place the order on our bicycles with the branding. So example, let's say a local casino or someone wanted to sponsor these bicycles, then their branding would be all over these bicycles. And that brings the cost down for all the locals to rent the bikes. Yeah.
Sure. Commissioner McCann?
Can I use my own bicycle in this program? Is it a personal bike ride sharing, or where do the bicycles come from?
No, the bicycles, well, these ones will have that system that you saw where they can unlock it via their smartphone. So all the bicycle share system will just be the bicycles that are included with our system. We couldn't give you like a lock to be added to the system.
So like in the past, most of the dock stations, they were these huge, you know, bulky items that had to be drilled into the ground, or power source had to, you know, we had to have access to power sources. Now these bikes are just individual. Everything from a bulky dock station has all been brought down to just a simple lock that's on the bike. So each bike has its own SIM card, runs GPS, gives us all the information onto our dashboard, and that's how we can, you know, run this whole system efficiently.
I think Dara had a question.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. So 3 months from now is June 20th, and it's already going to be in the triple digits next week. So how do you plan to make profits during the summer?
Well, going back to what we're saying, we have a lot of work to do. We're gonna start targeting a lot of businesses and to see who wants to support, this business, and that way we can get some marketing going. But 3 months is, I know that's pretty soon, but we still have a lot to go forward with, placing our order. This is through overseas, getting our bicycles here, getting all the locks. So, but we pretty much taken care of a lot of the back side of the business, and we're just waiting to see if, the city's on board with something like this.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Baker.
There's an existing program right now in Paris, but the problem is with the location where you leave the bikes. I'm not sure what the protocol is, but the reality is people just leave bikes on sidewalks and corners. They don't go to any designated spot. It's actually become a hazard to pedestrians and motorists because people just finish doing what they're doing. They just kind of dump the bike and walk away. So you're saying there are preset drop-off locations throughout the city? Am I hearing you correctly?
Through the geofencing, we actually set up these virtual parking spaces. In the past, when these dockless bike share systems started, they didn't have these systems implemented yet. And then not only that, these are big cities that have over 1,000+ bikes that they just flooded into the streets, China, Europe, and all that. So the bikes, it was a huge mess. We, coming into the city here, we want to start a pilot, anywhere from 50 to 100 bikes, see how it goes. And by setting up these virtual parking spaces, we now put all the responsibility on the users. If they're not bringing the bikes back into those actual designated areas where they needed to be parked, they will be penalized. And for the most part, if they exit the actual the main diameter area that they go out, then they start accruing fees, and it won't let them lock the bike. They'll say, oops, you have to bring the bike back into the designated area to lock up the bicycle.
And to add to that, we also will be balancing the system. So, every evening we look at the bikes, we see where they're at, and we move them around based on how much are needed in what areas. So we'll know. And like I said, in real time, we'll know if they're just left and not in a designated area. We can address that immediately.
Let me ask the question. Where do you have celebrity bikes at this point already?
Well, we have some at local hotels here in the Coachella Valley and as well as in LA. So,
Okay, you're in the city of Los Angeles?
Yes, in the
Yes,
city of
Santa Monica.
Oh, okay, in Santa Monica. Okay. Yes, Commissioner Sprite.
Hi. I just have a couple questions about practicality. So you're coming to the city to ask for permission to have docks, to have real estate. I guess what I want to understand is what are you asking from the city? And then the larger question is if a city decides to use your company for this, then we are choosing a company to support over maybe other companies. So I guess I really want to understand what it is you are seeking from the city, because you would need the city to approve for you to work, you need the city to approve the real estate for you to have the bikes, correct?
We're like what we said, there won't actually be any docking stations anywhere. The bicycles will just be throughout the city, and they can lock them up to existing bike racks. That's the whole thing of the dockless. We don't have to designate a certain spot for them. What we were mentioning to the city is that we wanted to know if you required any permit process we need to go to or through to get this started. And we wanted to see if the city, if they were okay with the bike share system, they would be able to do a partnership with us, an exclusive partnership, which would allow us to implement the share system and grow it over a certain number of years.
I'm sure you have to have a business license, but
Yes,
beyond
we
that,
do.
I don't know if
So we-
Jay wants to respond as one of the staff directors.
Jay Verrata, Economic Development Director. How are you guys? Thank you for
Good,
coming.
thank you.
So, as our chair has mentioned, getting business license is step one, which it sounds like you've accomplished. And I'm curious to know, in other cities, were there right-of-way permits required to have the bicycles, say, residing in the sidewalks? I mean, it sounds like you've addressed a lot of those because you're parking them where there may already be bike racks. So parking bikes there is the purpose of those. but what was your experience, say, with Santa Monica in terms of the city approvals?
Well,
So,
go
oh, sorry. So with Santa Monica, we have Celebrity Bike Rentals, like George said, is a bike rental company that partners with hotels. So we partner with hotels providing rentals on their properties. This is a bike share system that we're expanding our current business under. Our LLC will now be OWL, which is going to be geared towards the residents and the tourists. So this will be the first time we do this bike share system. And since it's a relatively new concept in cities across the country, there isn't a whole lot of regulations in many cities yet because they're just coming out with it. They're rolling out what they want in their city. So I couldn't, I know some cities require like a small permit to get started. I don't think the city has anything in place yet, but that's why we're approaching you with our idea, see if there would be any process that you guys would implement that we would need to go through.
It would be prudent to visit with our planning director to discuss how your operation is planned for proceeding. And I think from there, we'd have to identify potential issues, and I'm sure they'd come up with ideas to work around them.
And that's why we wanted to come to the city, because there's companies that have just gone into cities and dumped their stuff and not told the city, and they haven't worked with the city, and then they have, backlash because things like they weren't planned out, like there's a mess on the sidewalk. It's, it's horrible. So we're locals, and, we live here in the valley. We love Palm Springs. We want to make sure that if we do something like this, we have the support of you guys behind us.
Yes, Commissioner Wilson.
Two of the maps that I noticed were Berkeley and Toronto. So I know staff in the city of Berkeley, and I know somebody on the commission has a history in Toronto. So if we contact staff in those cities, I just want to make sure that would be copacetic.
Yeah. Those maps, those are just demos that they sent us, our app developer. So he sent us just like information, just to give you guys an idea of how it would look in our city. So this, at the end, this is kind of what it would look. When you log into your app, you'd see a bunch of owl eyes, and you can click on one, and it'll give you an estimated time to get to that bike, or there might be a bike right next to you when you exit Lulu's, and if you want, you just scan it, and it immediately unlocks, and then you can ride it.
But you are operational in those cities?
No, we are not operational in those cities.
Oh.
No.
This is just a demo they sent us over so we can give you guys an example of how this works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Baker?
Of course, I just forgot my question there. Where was I going? Oh, in terms of the geography. So is it just city of Palm Springs proper? So if I want to take CV Link and drive to Ranch Mirage and come back, am I incurring a penalty because I've left the city limits?
CV Link and actually the rest of Coachella, I mean, that's the future of OWL. We would like to expand, but right now we wanted to start off just, in
the
actual
city.
downtown Palm Springs area, probably extending out to the south side, Ace hotels and all that. And then as we see this pilot, if it works out very well, then we would like to expand more and more. Where now users can ride the bike from downtown Palm Springs and leave the bicycle over at the CV Link when they're done riding it, or take it to another city, Cathedral City, possibly. Yeah. So.
So we have to start with the pilot and see how it goes before we expand to that,
Okay.
obviously.
Okay, all right. Yes, Commissioner Sprite.
So if I understand correctly, would you rely on the existing bike racks in the city as your points of pickup and drop off?
Correct, yeah. They're going to be just like any other bicycle. So just like we have bicycles at hotels right now, the guests leave from the hotel, they leave their bicycles on racks. The only difference from these bicycles is now that they're open to the public and they can go to their phone and rent them. So there might be some on racks, there might be some near a grocery store. So it could, and also that's something else that we would want to talk to you guys about is possibly implementing a little bit more bicycle racks and near businesses, restaurants, etc. So that that way, when they're on the actual app, they can see the virtual parking spaces. It'll give them more choices to actually go park.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I just had a conversation this past week with a Palm Springs resident who's not a recreational biker. He's I bike to the grocery store, I bike to the gym, I bike to the dry cleaners. And he was bemoaning the fact of very few bike racks in commercial settings outside of the Palm Canyon corridor. And he says, when I go to Smoke Tree and I go to other places where there are shopping centers, there's no place for me to lock my bike, which I because I'm more of a recreational biker, I hadn't realized that. So, all right, we probably need to have just, did I see one more question? And then we probably need to move along because we have another presentation. All right, thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
encourage you to continue conversations with Jay, and he can help direct you through City Pass that will help you get some sense of direction, and keep in touch with us as you're moving forward.
Okay, thank you so much
Okay.
for your time.
Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you.
Enjoy your day.
Our second presentation is from Palm Springs Disposal Service. Chris Cunningham, come up, join us. We invited Chris to come and we've heard a bit about the recycling global market dilemma, and if you want to give us a little more information, that'd be great.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Commissioners. Appreciate the time. Commissioner McCann asked me to come and just speak on this. I'm glad he's mentioned something about this. I had conversations with Commissioners McCann, Clark, and Spry on this. And right now, we're raising awareness, but it is a dilemma. And I'm sure most of you know where our recycling goes right now, or most of it anyway. About 70% of it goes to the Asian markets in China. Well, China has been slowly banning the material. In March, they put a full-on ban on certain parts of it, plastics 3 through 7, paper, just because there's too much contamination in it. They've there's been a lot of global pressure on their environmental practices. So they're finally succumbing to that, and they're pretty much putting a ban on this stuff. The problem we're facing is that no domestic markets were ever really created. We've been doing this for about 30 years in the state. Same with Oregon, same with Washington, same with all the West Coast cities, and even inside. Because we can't take this stuff there anymore, and there's no domestic markets. There is a slim market for your metals. This, let me just be clear, it doesn't apply to C&D, it doesn't apply to organics, metal, things like that. It's your mixed recycling that you usually put inside your household containers. But at some point, this is going to be critical because right now, processors are filling their warehouses because they can't get rid of it. At some point, that's going to become a health and safety issue. So what are you going to have to do with it? It's going to have to go to a landfill if you can't find a place for it. Now, the problem with that is that the state has AB 939. That was enacted in 1989, and that is a requirement for every city in California. They have to divert at least 50% of their waste. Now, Palm Springs is fine. We're hovering around the 75%, but a lot of cities are not. And if you start tossing this stuff, the enforcement of this AB 939 is about $10,000 a day on a city if they don't meet that 50% criteria. Now, the industry right now is working with CalRecycle, working with policymakers so that there is some relief on this. Obviously, they can't enforce this AB 939 on cities now if there's simply no place to take the stuff. But right now, it's working on a domestic market and a short-term solution. Domestic markets are not going to be, the industry is saying somewhere between 3 and 5 years to get a full-time solution for this. So for the time being, this stuff that can't find a home is going to go to a landfill. And it's something we're just raising awareness. I do have a summary on this. I got about 10 of them to pass around for you guys, but I know you guys have that white paper too. Just something that's been circulated around the industry, around the regulatory agencies, and around policymakers. So I'm going to pass those around, but this is just awareness more than anything else right now. But at some point, you're going to hear more about it, and no one wants to hear this stuff is going to go in the trash. And we don't want to discourage recycling either. So it's one of those things, but it will become a health and safety issue. So you have no choice at some point to get rid of some of this stuff that we can't find a home.
Yeah.
So I want to keep it brief because
Sure.
I can really get in the weeds on it. So, and here,
Well,
I'll just pass it.
send that around, Chris. So you're saying that there are people talking to folks in Sacramento about how we can encourage a domestic market, but you're just saying it's going to take
That's
three
going to take
to
time.
5 years. to have that market in
Yeah,
place.
yeah, there are slim markets for some of this stuff too, but it has to be extremely clean. Right now, we move so much material in the state, Oregon, Washington, that they only want 0.5% of contamination. That's unattainable. You're not going to be able to get that. And right now, processors are running a third of the speed just to clean as much as they can up. It's getting extremely expensive, and they still can't get it clean enough to market. Now, there are real slim markets out there, but not nearly enough to cover that 70% that's been going to China.
Commissioners, do you have questions? Commissioner McCann.
No questions. I want to do a follow-up with what Chris has said and just emphasize that when we heard this from him last week, it set off alarm bells, and that's why I thought that this was worthwhile bringing up to you all. Here we are going to all this effort in the city to recycle and to channel all this stuff into our recycle bins, and then instead of getting recycled anymore, it's sitting there getting baled and warehoused. So I thought it was a serious enough problem that he should come and talk.
Well, and we heard about this when we were talking about budget issues too. That was part of the conversation in terms of our own revenue stream.
Yeah.
Too, right?
Yeah, there'll be a lot of discussions on more sustainable efforts. I know, Commissioner Spry, you brought up something about organic that really the industry wants to go, which is keeping this material in your city. So your food waste, and this is just an example, but keeping your food waste in your city and mandating your gardeners and to use the stuff in the same city. So it's the thinking like that will get us where we need to go. But I think the biggest problem right now, not the biggest problem, I think where we need to go is waste to energy. I think that's probably the future, is waste to energy. But you've got to get all the regulatory agencies on board. They're not all on board. It's very difficult to navigate that. So that's where the industry, there's several hauling associations throughout California, and this white paper has been spread around all over California. So policymakers do have it, CalRecycle does have it. So we've come to that point where California's not going to have a choice. Regulatory agencies will have to come together, will have to get on the same page to move some of these projects forward, like waste to energy, more of the organics. And
I did some research on the waste to energy, so I just wanted to let you all know what I found out about the options here. The first one is pyrolysis, and it's a pretty simple. It takes plastics and turns it back into oil. It heats the plastic, it melts and evaporates it, and then it condenses the gas back down, and it's diesel fuel basically. So you can then sell it and power your vehicles. It turns about 1 kilogram of plastic into roughly 1 liter of diesel fuel, according to one of the sources I read. So, okay, where are the plants? What options do we have? I found 2 companies. One of them is called Balanced Power Engineering Incorporated up in Vancouver, so it's a foreign company, not good for us. However, they did send me some ballpark figures that it would cost about $1.6 million to put in a plant down here for us, and this was running numbers based on our population. And then it would be about $300K of annual cost. This company does have a track record. They have a plant up and running in Senegal, of all places, because they have a big problem over there with tires. And this plant will actually do plastics and tires. Chris, I'm not sure if that would help us in any way. I don't know what happens to tires here.
You know, that all depends on regulatory agencies. If you can get them out there, that's why you don't see these in California. Otherwise, they'd be here.
Okay.
The expense, the regulatory agencies, those are all what I've been described to as death by 1,000 paper cuts. Trying to get something like that in.
The other pyrolysis-based company is called Resnergy, and it's based out of Rohnert Park, so it's at least a California company. Their website sounds really good. It says they provide and service modular low-emission plastic to hydrocarbon oil conversion systems to recycle chemically valued plastics to create fuels. Sounds really good. The trouble with them is, if you look at them more closely, they have not actually manufactured and built a plant. So we would be the guinea pig. And those are the only 2 companies I've been able to find. There's probably more. The only other thing I found is another option is road resurfacing. There is a township in Britain that's taken plastics, mixed it with asphalt, and has a program to resurface its roads with it.
Yeah, do the same with glass, making asphalt and using the glass out of it too. So there's options out there, and the technology is there. There is technology out there for it, but it's the time It's the money it takes, and it's the regulatory affairs and issues that you have.
In the best of all possible worlds, and then I'll shut up and let you go. We would be working here on a pretty comprehensive plan for the Coachella Valley wide, I think, not just Palm Springs, to set aside a site, put in a plant like this, and put in an anaerobics digestive plant at the same place, and just start doing all of this. Really, that's what we should be doing, in my humble opinion.
Sounds like an opportunity for economic development,
Yes,
Jay.
it does, doesn't it?
I second that.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right.
And I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Spry and then Commissioner Baker.
So, I mean, sorry, my words are tied, but is it worth it to wash, in terms of education, right? And if in the best case scenario, in 5 years, there'll be a place for our plastics, but there's not for 5 years. Is it worth it to start an education campaign for people to make sure they wash out their stuff, but then we come up with the issue of the water, right? Because we're in a water crisis. So, I mean, and that's when you get to the regulatory agencies, right? You've got this great thing that turns all your plastics into gas, but guess what? The process pollutes the environment, right? And then that regulator stops it or whatever, and it makes sense, right? But I'm just wondering if now you need these things to be so non-contaminated, because I think about myself and how I recycle, and I could do a better job, you know, I'm like, it's plastic, and there's all this food in it, woo! You know, I mean, someone will deal with it. I shouldn't say that as Commissioner, sorry. But we need to be educated in what to do with this to maximize its.
Yeah, I think right now the raising awareness is the important thing to us. But to answer your question, I'm sure the drought would probably trump washing out
to recycle. Yeah, I agree.
And I think more importantly is there's some communities out there who have a residual rate, and residual by what I mean by that is the amount of trash that's inside the recycling containers. Palm Springs, it's not very much at all. It's a very low amount. But other cities, you're talking 60, 70%. It's almost used as a second trash container. So I think you would try to get that low-hanging fruit as far as education and trying to clean up what is recycling and what is not recycling before you went as far as washing things out.
Commissioner Baker.
In terms of, and you might be able to answer this, Commissioner, how efficient is that conversion into gasoline? I mean, are we spending more on the energy than we are in the outcome?
That's a really good question, and I don't have an answer for it right now.
Commissioners, other questions of Chris? Yes, Commissioner Friedman.
And maybe this technology doesn't exist, but the city's moving forward with the waste energy methane plant at the wastewater treatment plant. Is there any way of sort of bolting something like this onto that? Because that's already sort of going to be recapturing the methane from the water treatment plant. So I don't know whether you can add one technology to another, but that seems to be going forward. The French company that I know quite well, as having been living in France, is perhaps that would be an option of speaking to them to see if they might have some technology.
Yeah, the technology you're talking about, I think you can add fats, oils, and grease to that, as well as organics like food waste and maybe even green waste and things like that. But as far as trash is, that's going to be a different technology. You kind of, that's not going to go together with that one.
Okay. Other questions? All right. Chris, thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. When we approve the minutes, and then Jay will come back to staff reports. The minutes, item C, the minutes of the February 20th, 2018 meeting were sent out. I don't know if there were any corrections. Were there corrections? A couple, okay. And so is there a motion to approve the minutes with corrections? So moved by Commissioner Gauthier. Is there a second? Second. Second by Commissioner Fry. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed say no. All right, we have our minutes. You abstain. Thank you. And two abstentions from absences last meeting. All right, Jay, we'll circle back. Is there a staff report that you wish to give?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder that Desert Cities Energy community choice aggregation is still moving forward with a planned, hopeful implementation date of July or August of this year. And having been at their meeting yesterday, I know they're going to want to reach out to cities, sustainability commissions in particular, and really start getting the public outreach going. So I think we can anticipate a presentation from that group, and I know Commissioner Friedman is very well aware of all this information. Thank you.
Well, and, I mean, when, you're saying that they're wanting to get the public outreach going soon. I don't think there is, there was a little burst of information initially, but I think it isn't on anybody's horizon at the moment in terms of the general public.
Well, what had happened is the California Public Utilities Commission had thrown a few, we'll call them challenges in the way of the formation, and so not knowing schedule-wise how that would impact the implementation of the CCA, they pulled back on marketing, but it's starting to shape up, so anticipated implementation dates this summer. I think they're really going to want to work towards broad community acceptance and understanding of what they're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
And of course, the city of Palm Springs is part of the CCA.
Right. Well, I think we'll be interested to hear more in this setting whenever possible. Any questions of Jay?
I'll report more on in my energy because
Okay.
I did speak to CVAG this afternoon on this.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, David. All right, we are at the recycling report. Gary Calhoun.
Good evening, thank you. We had our shredding and e-waste event on February 17th. It was fairly well attended, collected quite a bit of e-waste, so we were pretty happy about that. And some questions were asked about the beverage container grant. So I got with the state, and one of the questions was, where exactly can we use them? Because there was some talk about maybe putting some in the schools, the public schools. Yes, you can do that. You can put the containers anywhere that is accessible to the public. And I asked if the state monies can be used to refurbish existing beverage container grants, and it cannot. The second thing that I found out was that Palm Springs High School does in fact have their own recycling program. They have one 30-yard for trash, 3-yard mixed recycling. That's where you can put your paper, your cardboard, plastic, anything in that. And then 1 yard for metal, and that's on an will call basis as needed. I found out some more information about the beverage container grant. The existing one expires in 30 June 2019. We can use monies from the prior one, which was 2016, and you can use that up until 30 June of this year. So you have an additional approximately $13,000. You can either spend that individually or you can combine it with the current grant.
Up until June 30th of this year.
You can spend the 2016 money until June 30th. After that, you're still eligible to spend the 2017 money until June of 2019. So you have 15 months for the current one and 3 months for the 2016 one.
Okay.
That's all I have.
That's all I have. Commissioners, questions of Gary? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Tara.
So with Palm Springs High School, do you know, because this is something I don't know, but do you know if the recycling is taken in by someone to the recycling center, or if the custodial workers, like if they work with that, or just like?
I don't know if some of the workers take some of the materials, but I do know the Palm Springs Disposal is the one that services the school. So they would be the one to collect both your trash and your recycling and handle it appropriately.
Because I see I see them used, I guess incorrectly a lot of the time. I see the school lunches ending up in the recycling bin, or vice versa, recycling in the trash cans, because they're not located in areas that are accessible. So maybe we can work on that.
Do you have someone at the school that you know that is in charge of the recycling program, or is it a student body issue, or?
ASB hasn't spoken on that, so I could talk to one of my friends in ASB and ask them if they work with that. I'm sure they don't. I'm sure it's someone in administration or.
Well, if you can find out, let me know, and I'll be happy to go speak with whomever at the school and try and establish a recycling program for you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Great. Other commissioners? All right, great. Thank you, Gary.
Sure.
All right, we are at old business. The first item is just to acknowledge that we did have our tree and plaque dedication, remembering Michelle Mycian. Was quite well attended, I think 50 to 75 folks, many commissioners. Yeah, there's a scene. So, and I want to thank Dan particularly for his efforts to get all of it organized and negotiating through the city and having a really nice program there. So was nicely done. So thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
All right, item 2, the Ad Hoc Committee on Film Festival Programs. I know Commissioner Futterman and Gothier were in Riverside last month. Do you two have anything you want to report at this point?
Well, we did both attend the Wild and Scenic Film Festival that the Inland Empire Waterkeeper put on, and it was a really nice event, a reception, silent auction, and film series all in. They did an afternoon portion for children, and then they did an evening portion for adults. Then Jennifer and I went back last week and met with Megan Brousseau, who's the executive director of Inland Empire, to debrief with her on the experience with Wild and Scenic. We got some good feedback from her. There's a little more follow-up we want to do on the research, and we'll have a full report at next month's meeting.
Okay, so we should put you on the agenda for
Yes,
a report
please.
then. Okay, great. Okay, for the April meeting. All right, Community Gardens. Commissioner Spry indicated that she was willing to be our point person for Community Gardens, and we did receive, as a part of our packet, her report of her visit of the Community Gardens. Is there anything you want to say about that verbally or questions of Commissioner Spry?
I have nothing more to add. It looks good.
Okay. So I guess I'm thinking, and as was noted during our bike conversation, we're moving up into a time of the year where you don't grow tomatoes outside. Maybe you can grow some things. But it would be the time of year where we would begin to promote the community garden plots and claiming those plots and renting those plots for the fall of 2018. So can you work with Dan and figure out how we can do that? Because my sense is that nobody in town knows they exist. I mean, there are 10 people that know they exist and they're using them. But in terms of a wider knowledge, it's not there. And I'm wondering how we get that message out.
Well, that speaks to a broader question I have when we talk about us. When we talk about, thank you. How, in general, how does the commission publicize things? I mean, that's my larger question. As opposed to, we have the garden and all the issues we talk about, and people come in and they want us to, and we talk about education, and Chris came in and talked about us being educated. How do we educate about the plastics issue? We have booths a lot, right? Are there other ways? Our website, are there other ways? We don't have a budget for advertising, right? Or promoting anything.
About the only other thing is like with the recycling events, we try to sometimes, put in notices through the Palm Springs disposal billing, but that doesn't get to many people these days anyway with online billing, so.
Right.
We need to think of some other better ways.
Maybe.
Well, a lot of it is, we can use the services of the city, communications office, Amy Blaisdell, if we have messages that we need to get out. We certainly got our website. We've got our presence on Saturdays at the farmers market. We've got our appearances at other community events. For instance, the 1 PS picnic that is this coming Saturday, where all the neighborhoods are present, would be the ideal time to have a little flyer that says, "Did you know Palm Springs has a community garden?" and that you could reserve a plot for whatever it is, $30 for a plot, contact Dan if you would like to have a plot starting, whatever our interval is, and maybe somebody ought to set up,
Okay.
a seasonal sort of something.
I'll do that.
So,
I'll
yeah,
make
so
up
I
a
just,
flyer.
so I think we don't have, other than our outreach, I mean, we do have an outreach subcommittee, and that would be one place to try to get our messages out. Commissioner Baker.
We have a wellness committee at Desert Age Project, and we have a little garden that we use, that one of the psychologists uses as a therapeutic mechanism. One of the longtime residents of the valley who grew up here, she's big with the Girl Scouts, and she was exceedingly anxious to have the Girl Scouts get involved with this for their merit badges and stuff. She just needed someone, she said they would be anxious to do it, even just to clean up.
And I'm not sure if it's the same group of Girl Scouts, but we do have Girl Scouts. That's one of the groups that are present at the community gardens. So
That's a
maybe.
good idea.
All right. I don't know if we have more things we need to say about this. We don't need to beat this up, but okay. All right. Thank you for your work already, and it's great to know that you will be a continuing person to keep watch over that program, because we just simply haven't had that. So thank you very much.
Sure.
All right. Item number 4, study session with our council member liaison, Jeff Coors. Vice Chair Clark was able to meet with council member Coors, and if you'd like to make a report on that meeting.
Yes, on March 9th, I met with Jeff to discuss a possible study session and a few other things, a couple of which I'll talk about. But Joe and I had talked about ahead of time what to bring up to Jeff, and we had some suggestions about the study session, and I'll just read from the script that I had sent to Jeff ahead of time. We would like to hear from you about current and future issues with council, especially those that are related to sustainability. The commission would have a report about current projects and issues that we see coming, such as priorities and budget issues. 2 hours minimum. Could be a weekday, 5 to 7 p.m. or 5 to 8 p.m., maybe better with a dinner break, or could be a Saturday or Sunday morning, like 9:30 to 12:30. Jeff was very open to this. He said all of those times sounded good, although he thought that perhaps 3 hours in the evening might be long for those people that work during the day. But he said, I told him that we would discuss it at this meeting, and we would come up with preferences and communicate them back to him. So really the discussion is open now as to what would work best for the majority or the full commission to meet with him, an evening or a weekday evening or a morning on a Saturday or Sunday, and 2 hours or 3 hours.
Sure. So what we really want to have is just a chance for kind of an open discussion and exchange, commission sharing, and for Councilmember Coors to share with us. There's at least 3 of us maybe at the table who experienced this maybe 5 or 6 years ago with council members Lewin and maybe, I'm not sure who else was present, maybe Councilmember Hutchison, Lewin and Hutchinson were our liaisons at one point. So a chance to somehow get on sort of the same page, for council to know what we're doing and for us to look ahead. So any comments, either Saturday morning, Sunday morning, or to do something on an evening 5 to 7:30 or 8-ish, and also including some food in there because it would make for a longer evening? Sense of what would work?
I like an evening meeting.
As opposed to a Saturday or Sunday? Okay. Any other opinions?
Evening meeting works for me.
Okay.
I prefer evening.
Okay, all right. Okay. Well, why don't, Vice Chair Clark, why don't we try to look at some dates? We can talk to staff obviously we're not talking about doing this next week. This would, be scheduled out quite some time out. So we need to find a location that would work, but there's There's conference rooms at the public library and at the Memorial Library downtown. So there's probably sites where we can go and find some conference room meeting space, so we don't have to stay at City Hall with the City Hall hours. So, Jay, do you have
Mr. Chair,
thoughts?
it would be a meeting.
Yes.
And meeting off-site, we wouldn't have all these wonderful microphones to record.
Okay.
So it would just be, that's just the only comment as far as the technology we have here.
Okay.
But sounds like a good idea to me.
Well, so then okay, so there's this sort of catch-22. Obviously, it will have to be a publicly noticed meeting, and the public has to be welcomed, even though we may have a little bit more free-flowing discussion than typically we do. If we were here and had a dinner break and the whole bit and recorded it, is that a problem to keep this part of the building open until 8 o'clock? Not with some advance notice and planning?
Right, shouldn't be a
Okay.
problem.
So you think it'd be staff's preference just to be here?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, yeah, it would be nice to go off-site, but again, you know, like Jay was saying, we could at least record it here.
Okay.
Whereas off-site would be difficult. I mean, we
Okay.
have done off-site meetings before, study sessions. You know, we did one on the sustainability master plan. We did a
Right,
study.
was off-site.
study Off-site, so.
Yeah, and we've been, and council has done study sessions at the convention center, but I guess they have recording capacity there too, so.
It
Okay.
doesn't necessarily have to be recorded, so, I mean, you know, we could do it off-site if you wish.
Okay, all right, we'll talk. Okay, so expect something back. Vice Chair Clark, did you have a?
So you and I and Jay will
We can
work
come up
together
with
and
some.
come up with some dates.
Come up with some dates, and obviously we've got to talk to Councilmember Coors.
Yeah, he said once we came up with some dates, just to send them to him and to Christina, and then they'll work it out.
Okay, perfect, great. Okay. Watch your email for some possible dates. All right. We're at item 5. Is there any reports that need to happen now related to our priorities, budget, and activity plans? Any reports that won't be otherwise covered in other committee reports later on in the meeting? I think we pretty much integrated all those topics into our regular meeting. All right, hearing none, we will move into item F, new business. We had a little preview of item 1 last meeting, and that is to approve an advertising budget for World Environment Day. You saw last month, I think prior to last month, or right after the meeting, I think, Dan sent us the complete text of Commissioner Futterman's report regarding billboards that would publicize World Environment Day. So there's a submitted motion to approve not more than $2,500 for up to 2 billboards promoting World Environment Day. I guess the other option is $1,750 for 1, was what's in your report. Commissioner Futterman, did you want to speak to any of this? Or just answer questions?
I could just answer questions, but I did, a graphics person that I'm working with, she created a save the date, so I'm gonna just pass this around. It's not perfect yet, but this is, I sent out a different version to some of the vendors, or I'm not really sure what to call them, that have been at the event before. So this is what we have now. This year's theme is Beat Plastic Pollution. So I was also speaking with someone that's interested in collaborating on this project of perhaps approaching Burtec, or, you know, for maybe some support, co-sponsoring the event for Beat Plastic Pollution. It seems like it would be a natural fit if they might want to partner with us for this year's event.
Okay. And so as we move forward, well, I guess what we need to do is there a second for the motion? Okay, second from Commissioner Fry. So as we're talking about this, since the World Environment Day event is significantly about promoting waste reduction and recycling with the art and the other functions, at least, I don't recall, did last year, did most of that come from the recycling, or from the from that fund rather than our other fund? Do you recall?
I don't recall offhand, but
Okay.
I think we did half and half.
Oh, maybe half and half. Okay, all right. Okay. Yes,
I
Commissioner
just
Baker.
have one logistical thing to point out. I swim every day and on the weekends at the pool next to the pavilion. And if there's a swim meet and baseball going on at the same time, there's absolutely no parking within 5 blocks of that facility. So my advice would be to make sure there's no existing swim meet or baseball event scheduled, because that parking area fills up very quickly.
Well, one good thing is this is a Sunday afternoon from 2 to 5, so we didn't have any problem, I don't think, last year or the years before.
Saturdays.
Yeah.
All right. Other questions?
I just had a comment
Yes,
that it
Commissioner
would seem
Gottlieb.
that if the theme is beat plastic, that maybe it could be more than a 50-50 split with the recycling money, since it's such a good fit with that.
Maybe you could take a look, Commissioner Futterman, at sort of the overall plan and sort of assess to what degree is it generally about sustainability and to what degree does it fall into waste reduction topics? And you'd be able to make some statement about that we could defend, at the point that we gotta allocate the money, so.
Sure, I think
good-
for
good
this
point.
year specifically, it definitely would make sense to come from the waste reduction fund,
Okay.
especially.
I'm
as
not
well
calling
if-
that,
yeah.
what's the name of that fund again?
Oh,
Recycling.
recycling.
The recycling fund, okay.
Recycling.
Yeah, okay. All right.
And if there's money that will be expiring in a few months in that fund?
That's totally different. That's just
Oh.
for the beverage container.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
So any other questions? No further discussion? All right, so the motion in front of us is to approve up to, not more than $2,500 for up to 2 billboards. So all in favor say yes. Opposed say no. Abstain. Motion carries. There you go. Move forward. All right, our second item in new business is a commission recommendation regarding Laverne Way, which has been a topic before council. You received a report, and I'll call on Commissioners Wilson and Friedman and Vice Chair Clark to report. Your name is first, Grant. Have at it.
I guess I'll go. I can't remember exactly where we left off on this topic at the last commission meeting, but you may recall that this issue was kicked back to us by the city council for review, with this particular component sent back to us for review of 4 items of 4 streets that are to be reviewed or redesignated and not just redesignated, but restriped in the city. And this particular street would be reclassified as a minor mobility corridor. And so before you is a statement that would be from the entire Sustainability Commission. And the reason for that is that the City Council directed it to go to the Active Transportation Committee of the Sustainability Commission, which doesn't really exist anymore. So although we've had the ATC on our agendas, that committee is really just Greg and me, and we're really the walkability ad hoc committee. And so we thought it would be more appropriate if it would go to the entire commission and have more teeth, so to speak. So with some support from the vice chair and also from Commissioner Friedman, we got this statement put together, which also had some input from Chair Jackson. So it's the summary plus the background, and hopefully you had some opportunity to review the entire statement here. And then also I did go ahead and add a 10th item here based on Mr. Flanagan's input. So I'll just go ahead and read what I drafted here as the 10th item, which would be the minor mobility corridor would better connect the multifamily residential uses at the west end of Laverne Way to the commercial uses near the east end of Laverne Way via non-motorized means. So if you would be amenable to that addition, I would propose that we take a vote on the statement to send this via staff to City Council.
Okay. And there is a motion before us to approve the report and forward it to City Council. So why don't we get a second, and then we'll continue. Second from Commissioner Friedman. Perfect. Now, further discussion and questions from commissioners. Commissioner Friedman.
As the commissioner who lives in that neighborhood and is already on Mary Canyon, I have firsthand knowledge. Toledo is was probably done in 2007, 2008. But Murray Canyon was added about 3 years ago now. The reports of traffic jams in that part of town are greatly exaggerated, to say the least. And certainly, particularly as the warmer weather is coming, but sort of very good biking and sort of pedestrian weather, I am seeing a larger number of people who are actually using that. So, including people who are already biking on Laverne. So it is being used, and if it's restriped, it will be a lot safer. And I certainly want to join what Mr. Flanagan said, because that would be a good access for people to get to the shopping centers there. The one thing I did want to mention, looking at the bids, and I'm not sure how we sort of address that. Farrell Way is also Farrell Drive, I guess, is also on the list. But it appears, and Jay, you may have sort of added it up, but it appears with the 5 of them, it looks like the bids exceed the amount that's available. There's roughly 400,000 that's available, and the bids came up 550 to 600. I didn't calculate all of them, but there is a strong possibility that council may put Laverne on the chopping block, just because the money is not there for 5 of them, but probably is there or very close to being there for 4 of them. I'm not sure how our commission addresses that. The bids are what they are. But I do have that concern. And so, we should sort of continue to urge council to do that, although I think I kind of know where this is going to come out, to be perfectly honest with you, given other budget concerns. So perhaps if it doesn't happen now, perhaps there's a way of working with Measure J, because Measure J is providing some funds to see if there would be, in future years, some Measure J money available, but probably for this fiscal year, it may not be possible. But I certainly want to support this and would encourage us to make the recommendation. I will be speaking at council not on behalf of the commission, but as a resident of the neighborhood to support it.
And this is on the agenda for tomorrow night?
April 4th, isn't
April
it?
4th.
I believe it's April 4th. I don't think it's on tomorrow night because the bids just came in.
Oh, okay.
I believe
Yeah.
it's on for April 4th.
Well, and of course, there's always the possibility of designating or reclassifying and striping at an appropriate time when there's other street work or
Yes.
other things. So you could make the designation and stripe later. Yeah. We could drop that. No doubt. Yes.
Yeah,
Commissioner
correct.
Wilson.
I don't think it was not our directive to make any sort of priority judgment based on the bids. Our directive was to provide opinion on Laverne Way specifically. So I appreciate the information on the bids, but our statement was in response to the request directly from City Council. So I was expecting maybe a little bit more discussion, so I would just add that prior to the meeting of the city council where this direction was provided, I did go out to Laverne Way, anticipating that this discussion was coming up at the city council meeting. And I was really impressed at how many cyclists were in the vicinity, and pedestrians as well. There were actually a lot more than I would have expected. Midday, presumably tourists and locals alike. So they are there, regardless of the striping being there or not. So.
All right, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of approving this report and sending it to city council, say yes.
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 Opposed, say no. Abstain, and motion passes. Thank you. All right, we're at item 3, and that is a discussion on a proposed ordinance regarding clean air smoking and tobacco use. I'd ask Commissioner Baker if he would review that material that it was presented to us last month at public comment, and thank you again for being here tonight. And so for us to just have a little bit of discussion about it, and I guess we can also talk about the retail licensing a little bit if we want to. So, Commissioner Baker.
Yeah, so the idea is to increase the ban on cigarette smoking. Right now, there's two competing laws. There's a state law versus what we have going on in Palm Springs right now. State law basically, as you're probably familiar with, just restricts smoking based on health issues. So if you're in an employment environment, you should not be forced to be in a closed space where there's secondhand cigarette smoke. The proposal would expand that even into your own residence if you live in multi-family, multi-unit dwelling places, parks, dog parks, public spaces. So basically the only place left to smoke would be in a detached single-family residence inside your own home. Or I guess assuming is the backyard, can you smoke in your or in your backyard on your own property? So that's the genesis of the idea. It's a discussion, so I don't know how to proceed exactly.
Well, sure. Okay, so you've sort of named it in a nutshell. It would significantly restrict places you could legally smoke in Palm Springs.
Correct.
All right. So we don't have a motion before us. The sense was that we could just have a little bit of discussion to see about the sense of the commission before we proceeded with any action or not. So questions, comments? Commissioner Baker or our experts in the audience could help us if need be.
Well, at our last meeting, I had a question. At our last meeting, we were told that marijuana also is classified as cigarettes, and but I wasn't clear as to whether that would prohibit people in multifamily homes from using medical marijuana in their home.
The regulations on marijuana are the same as alcohol. So if you can drink alcohol you can't smoke in your car and drive, you can't drink in your car and drive, but you can sit in your living room and drink, and you can sit in your living room and smoke a joint.
And so,
but the information we were given at the last meeting said
But not in
you
your
wouldn't
backyard.
be able to smoke in your
So you're saying if you had a prescription, so I think let's see if we can nuance this question.
Right.
So if you have a medical marijuana prescription, you would have a license to smoke in your multifamily condo or apartment. So you could do it for medical reasons, but not recreational reasons? Is that the possibility?
Line is very fuzzy. It's a blurred line. No legislator has come down and said A or B yet, because it's only been in effect since January 1. So there's no stated law on how this is going to.
But if smoking were outlawed in multifamily and I smelled smoke, I could complain to my building manager, right?
But I would argue then that I'm using a medicinal substance.
Okay.
No different from Vicks Vapor Rub.
Okay.
That would be my legal argument.
Okay, all right.
Okay, well, I'll just
Yes,
throw out an
Commissioner
opinion.
McCann.
Yeah, just for discussion. I think this is overly restrictive just in the following sense. From my reading of it, if you're in a multifamily dwelling, whether it's a condo complex or an apartment building, what this will do is prevent you from smoking in your own residence and also smoking in the vicinity. Whereas that is not the case if you own a single-family residence somewhere in the city, then you are free to be in the vicinity of your building and do whatever you like. I would oppose that because I think that's enforcing a differential set of rules for people based on just the fact that they're living in a multi.
So an economic issue, you're saying?
It smacks to me of a little bit of an economic issue. If you can afford your own place, then good for you. Go ahead and do whatever you want. If you can't, we're going to restrict you. I'm just throwing that out for discussion. I don't know.
So that was the same, I also own a property in Santa Monica, which has a similar ordinance where you're prohibited from smoking in multi-unit dwellings. And that was one of the issues raised. However, it moved through the council and has been law now for about 5 years. And it really hasn't been much of a problem in the city of Santa Monica.
Yes. Commissioners? Not to do it. Okay, Commissioner Friedman.
Perhaps it might be more efficient to look at the tobacco retail permit ordinance because that is sort of already a Riverside County ordinance and a number of valley cities have adopted it. It seems from research that Mr. Henriksen has brought to this body as well as to 1PS, that Palm Springs is behind the times. So perhaps if we were to look at things, we would start with where we're not doing something that other valley cities are doing, and we could look about what effect that would be. I understand that the tobacco retail permit is essentially addressed to limit, it's already prohibited, but additional enforcement of underage smoking, and that perhaps would fit well into our wellness sort of gambit, as opposed to, and perhaps have a better chance of being heard by city council. So I would suggest that perhaps if Commissioner Baker would be so inclined to sort of look more at that one, and I know there's a parallel track where this is coming up through 1PS. I don't know what will happen, but I do know that process is occurring at the 1PS level. But the point is, this is an existing ordinance. I believe that the county would provide all of the resources, so it may be more efficient to look at that as an initial sort of way of approaching the topic.
Sure. And I'll just say, the chair was kind of mistaken as I was creating the agenda. I didn't think that we were being asked to speak on that one way or the other, so I didn't put it on the agenda, but we can certainly circle back even today and have a little conversation about it as part of the general topic. So why don't I call on Commissioner Spry? You had your hand up, right?
I'll pass for it.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't we talk a little bit about tobacco retail licensing? I'm sorry. Did I miss Commissioner Wilson? Sorry.
I don't know if you want to address that first, but
Go ahead. Say whatever you need to say.
The question of elitism as it relates to the affordability of a single-family residence versus someone who may not be able to afford a single-family residence and that cost factor. I wonder if Mr. Hendrickson has been able to do some research in that regard, and maybe he can speak to that. Could we ask him if he could approach the table to speak to that?
Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Do you have a response about the economic issues? Sure.
If I may. First off, let me share that this isn't a new experiment by any means. This has already been taking place in many cities. And the ordinance isn't just about that. It's also about smoking on patios of restaurants and bars at public events, et cetera. So those are important components not to overlook. But coming back to in the single-family residence, in January 1st of 2017, HUD nationally required that all HUD contract properties are smoke-free inside and out. So if you're talking about economic perspective, I guess that issue has already come up before. I understand you're talking about elitism, and then there's some confusion about marijuana. So how would you like me to address the perceived elitism that you're suggesting?
Well, take for example, there are certain mental illnesses that are associated with smoking tobacco. I realize that this discussion stemmed from marijuana use, but I won't name the mental illness, but there is a specific mental illness that comes to mind that is associated with tobacco use. And so if somebody who has that particular mental illness smokes cigarettes, but is confined to a rental property, how would that person be able to smoke in his or her residence?
That's a question I haven't heard before, but here's another one I want to also share. And that secondhand smoke and thirdhand smoke also cause discrimination, because as a result of where they exist, there are many people with respiratory issues that are excluded. They can't participate fully in society the way others can, because if they have emphysema, COPD, respiratory development issues, other heart issues, they've had stroke issues. It's also a matter of discrimination. And so that's an issue that has to be addressed too. Is everything perfect? No, but this isn't by any means a new experiment, and it's very successful in most places. Palm Springs only has state mandated ordinances to ban public smoking. We're about 25, 30 years behind most cities in the state. And so this ordinance covers a lot more than that.
Did you want to comment about the nuances of the new marijuana law? Does that affect this in any way?
I'm glad you asked that, because there's a lot of confusion. People think that as a result of marijuana being made recreationally legal in California, that suddenly it can be done anywhere and everywhere. And as Commissioner Baker had mentioned correctly, is that it's very much like alcohol. You can't consume it in public, which is missed by a lot of people. So you wouldn't be able to use that on restaurants and bars or public events before January 1st or after.
What about in the privacy of your home if you're living in a multifamily home?
You know, that's a good question, and there is a resource, and I will ask them about that and get back to you on that, because I don't know for certain, but there is a coalition with the Riverside County Department of Health that we work with, and I will address that question to them. It's a good question. Thank you.
Commissioner Spry?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying one way or another, but if the sticking point was the multifamily, is there a way to support everything else with the exclusion of, because that's it,
Good
right?
question.
The multifamily is what could make or break the whole support potentially, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So, if that was a choice, is that a choice to just not include that part?
It can be done in components.
Mhm.
So the answer is yes.
Okay.
Commissioners, do you want to take a moment and speak, as Commissioner Friedman said, to the tobacco retail licensing ordinance? And that would be, the suggestion is that we adopt the template of Riverside County for Palm Springs. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll offer a comment. I've been in support of this for 3 or 4 years. I just couldn't get a council member to support me in the conversation at that point. So I think we are desperately in need of adopting that to try to stem the underage tobacco use in Palm Springs. Cathedral City's had it for a number of years, and so why wouldn't we as well? Anyone else have a thought?
I think it's a no-brainer.
All right. Is there a sense from commissioners that we would want to agendize something about the tobacco retail licensing ordinance in April? And whatever other further discussion Commissioner Baker wants to bring to us, but are you around April 17th? It's tax day. It is. Okay.
I guess the question there is just what our role would be or what we would do. I know that this is being worked through the Ecology Committee of 1PS, and the plan is for them to take this forward to the City Council, or the expectation is that they will. No?
We'll see. It's in the early stages.
Right, but
At this time, what we're looking for would be, at very least, a resolution of support for the tobacco retailers permit from the Sustainability Commission.
And that's what I was getting at, since
Yes.
since the other path is being taken.
Yes.
If we could show support, that would be valuable.
That's what we're requesting
Okay.
at this time.
So we could agendize something like that for the April meeting, a resolution of support for a tobacco retail licensing program per Riverside County. Okay, all right. All right, Commissioners, other questions about this topic? Commissioner Baker, anything else you need to say? All right.
I have a question.
Okay.
Just what would the
Commissioner
next steps be for the other ordinance? I'm just
Well,
trying
I
to
think
understand
that, I think the
process.
next steps would be if Paul and Bob want to have continuing conversations with Commissioner Baker about this and moving it
The
along
citywide ordinance.
through the wellness subcommittee, that could happen. And I'm sure council can, I mean, they may do nothing, or they may have some incremental step in this. They might ban it in bar patios, but not address the individual. I mean, there could be all kinds of incremental steps. So why don't you all keep talking on that? We'll at least
Okay.
bring up the TRP and at the April meeting.
Great.
Yeah. And of course, any commissioner can say whatever they jolly well please at any point too. So that's
Everyone got a copy of the TRP and the city ordinance
we
as
did.
it is so
I
far?
think we did it prior to the February agenda. I think. Well, maybe not. If actually, why don't you be sure?
He
Paul,
did send
that-
it to me. I thought I sent it out to everybody.
Okay, but why don't we put the TRP back in our April agenda packet? If Dan, if you don't have it, you can get in touch with Paul.
We're
You
glad
got
to
it.
get it
Okay,
to you.
all right, good. All right, let's move along.
Thank you.
We would all like to go to dinner at some point tonight. All right, we are at item number 4. We did receive a request from staff at the Palm Springs Public Library to again sponsor prizes for their summer reading program. Last year, we approved $350 to purchase some bikes and safety equipment, which were a part of the prizes offered, and Sustainability Commission had materials at the library. I think, Commissioner Friedman, were you there?
Maybe 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Commissioner Clark was there last year. I was there last year. So it's a nice event. So we have received that request, and that motion is before you. If there is a second, we'll talk about it. Second from Commissioner Baker. Other conversation? Hearing none. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed say no. Abstain. Motion passes. All right. Thank you. All right, we are at committee and commissioner reports, and the first one is the Solar and Green Building. Commissioner Friedman.
Okay, As Director Verada mentioned, the Desert Community Energy Board met yesterday, and I had a chance to speak to Benjamin Durian of CVAG this afternoon to follow up without repeating too much what was just said. The goal is to go live this summer. There are some complicated issues with the CPUC, but hopefully they'll be able to resolve themselves. I once again extended an offer to assist CVAG and DCE on rollout in Palm Springs, including hopefully organizing a brown bag with 1PS to bring the residents involved. The DCE is looking into having a community advisory committee, and I sort of threw my name into the hat yesterday by sending an email to Katie, because I would very much be honored to be directly involved in that and assist on rollout, and just sort of it's a informal advisory committee that I believe they're doing, which is best practice with some of these CCA programs. I'm also in touch with Kim Floyd of the Sierra Club. He was at the meeting yesterday. He called me, and we'll perhaps organize a meeting with Councilmember Coors and Director Verada just to discuss some technical issues and offer our input on that, just because we're sort of energy geeks on that. So I'm happy to help out, like to see this sort of rolling out. There have been some issues on Rancho Mirage, which is moving along with a separate provider, and I've heard, at least anecdotally, that there's some concern about the rollout. So we should get that right, and hopefully also encourage people to adopt the what will be the carbon-free option. It will include large hydroelectric. There was a discussion yesterday, but the 100% won't be all renewable, so there will be wind and solar, but also there will be some hydroelectric involved in that. There may be later on next year or so a separate option that would just be essentially wind and solar, but for the moment the 100% will be carbon free but not 100% renewable because of issues on hydroelectric. So we'll move forward on that. Also on the regulatory front, the Energy Commission was supposed to adopt the new energy code tomorrow. That's been postponed for at least a short amount of time. There was a number of public comments at a hearing they held earlier this month, early February, and written comments. So I'll continue to follow that process in Sacramento and report back, particularly on solar. I don't expect, based on the comments that were provided, that there's going to be any change from what we expected, which is a slightly more than 2 watts per square foot requirement for Palm Springs. But I'll continue to follow that because I expect it to be adopted soon. We talked last month about the solar resolution, which council adopted in January. Daniel finally got the correct version of the resolution from FLINFAG earlier today and has now posted that. I will be following up with the National League of Cities about their Soul Smart program to see about the city getting designated. They're having a webinar Thursday morning, so I'll sign up with that and then follow up and inform Director Verada about how we can get something nice for Palm Springs if we get a Soul Smart designation for that. And finally, on the energy green building, at tomorrow night's council meeting, at the request of Councilmember Holstage, the council will be asked to consider a resolution opposing reopening of the Bureau of Land Management proposal on the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan, which the Obama administration had finalized, but the current administration is trying to open up, and obviously there are concerns about substantial development areas, particularly bordering Joshua Tree, that would negatively affect both the environment but also Palm Springs tourism and issues about our quality of life here. So hopefully council will adopt that tomorrow. So that's it for me, and I know Commissioner Goins is working on a green building, green jobs program, so I'll let him talk about that.
Yes, calling you for that. And you were not present last month when we acknowledged what a success the Modernism Week programs were. So thank you for that. And what have you got to say about the next steps?
Not much to say right now. They're scheduled for 3 consecutive Saturdays, April 14th, 21st, and 28th for 3 hours. It's going to be 1 hour of instruction, lunch, and a 2nd hour of instruction. So that's what we have scheduled at this time. So we're going to work on getting a registration system in place so that we can gather names and numbers of people who want to attend. 20 to 25 people is a good number. but it's a pilot program, so if we get 5 people, that'll be great. But I think there's a lot of interest, so I think we can do better than that.
And what exactly is this called, and where is it going to be?
It's the G-Pro program, so it's a green building fundamentals program. So the idea is you get 4 hours of instruction, you take a 2-hour test, and you're awarded a certificate that basically says, I understand green building at a fundamental level. It's a building block credential that you can then use to learn in more detail about other areas of green building, mechanicals, electrical, carpentry. So it's a way to whet the appetite about green building, and people can use that to do projects in the community or think about it in terms of a career. So we're starting it off, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay, all right, keep us informed. Commissioners, questions of Commissioner Goins or Commissioner Friedman? All right, we're at the Standing Committee on Waste Reduction. Commissioners McCann, Spry, and Clark.
Okay, we've already discussed one of the points tonight, the plastics recycling crisis, so I don't have to say anything more about that. That'll save us a bit of time too. Next issue is household battery recycling. On March 1st, the Standing Committee on Waste Reduction, which I've started to use the acronym that you can pronounce SCOUR, which I kind of like. So SCOUR members, Roy Clark and myself met with Harriet Barron, who's the Director of Resource Development here for the City of Palm Springs, to move out and discuss the feasibility of submitting a proposal to the Cal Recycle Household Hazardous Waste Small Projects Program. And we vetted the plan that Roy has come up with to expand the options for battery recycle here in the city beyond just the Saturday morning drop-off at the Riverside County site that exists right now, to provide small bags to city residents where they will store their household batteries, and then when they're full, they will take them to recycle containers that we're trying to get in different city areas and establishments like the library and various other places. So that was the plan. We did determine at this meeting that it did fall under the auspices of this small hazardous projects grant program, and therefore Harriet Barron worked up a draft proposal. We looked it over, did some work on it, and that worked well. And then the bottom line is that on March 19th, we did submit a grant proposal to it. I believe it's for $50,000. And that would cover all the costs of what we're talking about, both upfront and sustaining. So hopeful that something good will come out of that. Second issue, reducing polystyrene takeout containers for restaurants. Just a bit of history. On February 14th, Councilmember J.R. Roberts asked the Sustainability Commission to research similar ordinances in other municipalities, offer recommendations and suggestions, and provide an update on legislation at the statewide level that's seeking to put a ban on these kinds of containers and plastic straws. In response, on February 28th, Jessica completed the first draft of a report to us addressing Council Members Roberts' requests. We have now reviewed her first draft. It's currently under revision, and we anticipate delivering a report to the Commission next month. And if I'm going too quickly, anybody have any questions or anybody of this, just interrupt me. Yeah, please do.
I was in email communication with Christy Holstich today, and she suggested that I was talking to her also about, I had noticed there had also been some bans, there's bans for restaurants, there's the plastic straw ordinance, and there's also, bans about citywide facilities and anything the city sponsors using expanded polystyrene styrofoam. And so she suggested that we go in strong, and because she's in huge support of this, and she wants us to be, she thinks it might get whittled down eventually, but that we should go in strong. And so after today, I'd like to also add in another ordinance that bans the styrofoam on citywide events. So, look.
These are citywide public events you're talking about?
Yeah, and at city properties, and there's a whole other ordinance that for cities as opposed to for restaurants, and so I intend to add that as well.
Okay, let's go for it. Last but not least, And here, I'm just gonna summarize, there's a lot more activity on this one going on behind the scenes. Our next subcommittee meeting is this coming Monday, and anybody who wants to get involved more in the details on this, feel free to come to our meeting, because we're expanding the time on it to an hour and a half or 2 hours, I think. But just a bit of background, in January, Gary notified us that we had some money from the sale of soda, beer, and wine purchases in the city that we could use to allocate to recycled container deployment, purchase and deployment. So as a result of that, we've been conducting site inspections of public parks and other public areas where the public does like to congregate, like downtown. We've been serving and providing examples of recycling trash container designs from our own places and also from other city municipalities. And we developed a little bit of a taxonomy of container designs so that we can start, as moving forward, to make some informed decisions about what containers out of this big design space that we should go for and spend this money on. So as a result of all this, we've recommended a spending plan that would focus on providing recycled containers starting in public parks where there are very few. There's all kinds of trash containers and almost no recycled containers. Let's see, then just this afternoon, Roy Clark gave a presentation summarizing our findings and our suggestion for adding recycled containers in public parks to the Park and Rec Commission. And I didn't know how this was going to go over, but it generated about 40 minutes of discussion. We got a lot of stories about the history behind this, and there was an effort to do this a few years ago. It was aborted, and it's never been picked up. But I would say, Roy, that the bottom line from that meeting is they're very supportive of getting something into the parks. If we can do it, and if we can get containers in there that can alleviate some of the problems that Stacy was talking about that they have with them, which is that they're the targets. If you have a recycle bin, then they're going to go after it, try to steal the recycled material out of it, and in the process, they often just scatter the container and everything in it that isn't recyclable, just all over the ground. So we've got some issues there. But in general, they were very supportive of the idea, and they've allocated somebody on their commission to start to work with us on it. So we're going to be moving out on this on Monday at our meeting, big time, and starting to look at some of the designs and maybe some iterate down to the ones that we like the best. Roy, anything to add to that?
No, nothing to add, thanks.
So a couple of questions from me. So are we still in the window of time to be able to spend the 2016 money that Gary's talking about, or?
I believe we are.
Is that getting too tight in terms of being able to get a purchase order in and go through all those processes to get something delivered?
I don't know the answer to that. I am hoping, perhaps naively, that the answer is no, that because if we don't spend this money on this very quickly, it'll be kind of a travesty.
Well, it's I think 16,000 expires June 30th.
Right.
But there's other money. That's the 2016 money according to
Right.
Gary. But then there's 2017 money that's still available till 19.
If we
Please.
split them up, I mean, I think one's 11,000 and one's 12,000. Yeah, so that would still be below the amount that would need to go to city council, but it would need city manager approval. So we could maybe squeeze it in time if we do the 2016 money now, and then.
Well, and it is
Yeah.
a grant,
That would-
right? It's a grant, so it's not as if
Well,
we're even expending.
approval for what we buy.
Exactly. I know, I understand that, but I'm saying it's not as if we're asking David Reddy to approve an expenditure out of city funds. It's approving grant money. Yeah.
He would still have to approve the
Yeah, no,
designs.
Yep.
But the challenge is going to be to come up with a design of a
Yes.
container in 3 months. And especially with the input that we got from Stacy and the Parks and Recreation Commission, it's going to be a challenge to come up with something that is vandal-proof, easily maintained, visually separated from trash containers. I think we understand what we have to do, but it's a matter of finding the right type of container.
Yeah, and then getting everybody's approval on the decision to go for it. But again, when this money is sitting around and what we have identified here is such a clear and obvious use for it, We'll try to go for it, is what I'm saying. And
Commissioners, questions for these three commissioners on this report? Okay, I do want to remind the commission that the last month, we did give this subcommittee the authority to move forward on the beverage container expenditures without coming back to us. So if they do find a solution, they can move forward without getting an approval back from us at one of our meetings related to that issue.
that's very good. Good. The less regulation we have on this, the better, so that we can jump.
So you can, if
especially,
you figure out a plan for the
Yeah.
beverage, and this was out of also consideration for Gary's concern about using the money. If you can figure out a plan to move forward, you don't have to come back to us. We approve that at the February meeting. I also want to ask, so possibly we may have a substantial discussion on the styrofoam beverage or styrofoam food containers and straws at the next meeting. Is that a possibility, you're saying?
At this meeting or our subcommittee
I'm saying
meeting?
at this meeting. What I'm trying to do as chair is figure out how much time I need to allocate for some big discussion items. Are you anticipating that that's an April discussion item for us?
Yes. I guess I would just like to add, we will discuss it in our meeting on Monday, and I still have some concerns about what we need to do going forward, and we'll have time to discuss those during that meeting. So
Okay.
we will let you know after
Okay.
we meet on Monday.
Okay, all right, perfect. Okay, other questions? All right, we are at the item 3, ad hoc committee on walkability and pedestrian planning. Anything from you, Commissioners Wilson or Gothier?
I think Commissioner Gothier has a very lengthy report to present.
We have no report.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Baker, anything else on wellness?
Yes, I reached out to the desert, I always get this name wrong. It's the Desert, it's not Desert Regional, it's Desert Healthcare, what is it? Foundation, yeah, not the foundation, but the. Yeah, district. Thank you. I was kidding. I spoke to them, and they have some things coming up before summer, and they'd be happy to have the city work with them. They're going to send me more information on that I can present to you, but I did have just an opening introduction conversation with them, and they're very anxious for any support that we could lend to them for their wellness activities they have planned already for the springtime.
Okay, great. Well, we'll be eager to hear it, and if there is information that just needs to be disseminated, send it to Dan, and he'll get it out to us. Commissioner Freeman, anything on water issues?
Yes, first, the good news. As you may recall, that during the drought, the city of Palm Springs saved a substantial amount of water. I had actually gone through dozens of pages of spreadsheets, of Excel spreadsheets, and come up with a calculation of, I believe, about a 37% reduction of water during the drought period declared by the governor. And the DWA board issued a resolution commending the city of Palm Springs for its outstanding water savings. So that's good news. And there's a
certificate suitable for framing.
And hopefully we can display that in a prominent location here at City Hall to sort of encourage people to follow the examples. That's the good news. The bad news is that was then, this is now at this morning's DWA board meeting. They announced that the savings from the 2013 baseline for February was only 8%. It's been going down the last couple of months. I thought it was because of the warmer weather we were having, but February was fairly cool, so that was not necessarily the issue. There is concern that was expressed at the DWA board meeting about sort of conservation fatigue and conservation message fatigue. So they're going to be looking at perhaps other ways to spread the conservation message. And I offered to work closely with Ashley Metzger, who's the conservation outreach manager at DWA, to assist to see what the city can do to provide some support for those efforts, because we need to be doing better. This is not just Palm Springs or DWA. It does appear to be statewide that the messages sort of dropped off the radar. So we'll work with that. And finally, I'll be joining DWA and other community leaders on a tour of the Hoover Dam and the Colorado River Aqueduct at the end of next month. That's an educational tour because most of the water that comes through DWA and provided Palm Springs actually is generated from the Colorado River as opposed to Northern California. So I'll be doing an insight visit. I'll report back. It's after our April meeting, so I'll report back at the May meeting and share any information that I had. So I'm looking forward to that.
David, would that be open to us to
There was a small list because it's paid for by the Metropolitan Water District, so I think that I was, I do encourage you though, I believe Vice Chair Clark has already done it. There is a Water Counts Academy, which is, I believe, 3 evenings at UCR Palm Desert, followed by a sort of half-day site sort of going around sort of some of the leading sites. So if you haven't done that, I would encourage it. They're just finishing up one round and they'll probably announce a new one in the next couple of weeks.
Questions of Commissioner Friedman? All right. Outreach, Commissioner Futterman, any report?
Well, I wanted to thank you all for the approval to get our billboards done. So we'll be working on a design. If any of you have any ideas of what to do, or you know what might look good, and if any of you have ideas of how to distribute these, I will get some printed before this weekend's 1 PS neighborhood picnic, so we can have those at the table just to save the dates. Some of you have mentioned that you have contacts that you feel might be good outreach educators for the event. If you have any other ideas, I welcome you to share those with me. If any of you would like to join me in planning this event, you're most welcome to do that. And you know, we'll keep our 1 day a week or 1 day a month at the farmers market.
And I guess since monthly things tend to come up pretty
Quickly.
monthly, yeah. So we probably need to get communication out about staffing for April 7th at the farmers market, right?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
That's it.
That's it?
Did that have day of week? I noticed it had the date, but did it show day of week? I think that helps.
Didn't say Sunday. Yeah.
Good idea.
Yep.
That's a good point.
Very good idea. And so, since Commissioner Futterman mentioned it, we do want to remind you of the 1 PS picnic. It's this Saturday at Ruth Hardy Park. And Sustainability Commission will have a booth there. And I know Vice Chair Clark will be there, and Commissioner Spry, Commissioner McCann, Commissioner Friedman, and myself. Oh, okay, all right, okay. And I don't know if I knew that Commissioner Friedman was there, but that's great.
Commissioner Friedman replied to the last email that I sent out, and so he will basically cover her shift.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Great.
What time does it begin?
It's at, official start is 11 a.m.
11 to 2.
until 2. Yeah. Starts winding down 1:30-ish typically. Once everybody's had their hamburger, they go home. Yeah. But it's a fun event, and a lot of people, and it really is a chance to get some messages out. But we have some of our basic sustainability flyers there too. Okay, great. Thank you, Dan. All right. Any questions of Commissioner Futterman? Anything else? All right. Commissioner comments?
I have some on milkweed and monarchs, which I neglected to suggest for the agenda, but just some updates on things that we talked about. One of the main reason why I made the appointment to talk to Jeff Kors on March 9th, or at least the initial reason, was to talk to him to get some guidance on proceeding with the mayor's pledge for milkweed for monarchs. We had the draft request to Mayor Moon. I gave him a copy of that. He said he would contact Mayor Moon to determine if he was willing to sign the pledge, and if not, David Reddy, as the CEO of the city, can sign. I will get back with with Jeff regarding our preferences for the study session, and so at the same time, I'll ask him if he's been able to contact Mayor Moon. Secondly, we were just talking about the ONPS picnic, and we will have butterfly, milkweed, and monarch information at the table for the Sustainability Commission, like we did at the farmers market at the beginning of the month. And Christine Hammond will be there. And I did want to mention, for those of you who hadn't heard about it, and I'll pass these around, on Sunday, the 25th at 1 o'clock, there will be a butterfly block party at the DWA facility, which is on near the water park on Gene Autry. There's a butterfly garden, there's a mural, they'll have music and crafts for kids and food, so everybody's encouraged to attend. And Christine and I will be there at a table as well. And finally, Christine had a question. I don't know if we can discuss it now or we need to agendize it, but for future work that we do on milkweed for monarchs, since the commission has said that we wanted to be a sponsor, a promoter, would we be able to use your Sustainability City logo? If that's something we can't answer or discuss now, we can postpone it to a later discussion.
I think have that discussion with staff, and maybe they can just answer it, and if it's something we need to get on the agenda, we will.
Okay.
But maybe they're smart, maybe they'll have an answer.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Other commissioners with things to say? Dara?
I know my garden club is going to have a booth actually at the butterfly block party. I'm not sure if I'll be attending, but I know the high school, like some representatives will be there, and so I might be there with them, so that's awesome.
Okay, great. Other things? Commissioner Futterman?
I think that this is probably the only time that I could probably say something about this, but I was pretty disappointed that the buzz was discontinued or is going to be discontinued, because I think that this was a huge opportunity to have a sustainable, sustainably run transportation, and I think it made Palm Springs stand out in a way. I've seen one in Ojai. I think that there weren't enough options explored to cut costs, and it was just, they killed the buzz, and it seems unfortunate. So I just wanted to express that.
Other things? Well, I just want to say I am awfully excited about the initiative that is happening on just about every front in the Sustainability Commission. There's just lots going on lots of different topics, waste and tobacco and films and bike paths, and so keep at it. Just great stuff is happening, has happened, and is on the path. And I think the possibility of having a conversation with Councilmember Coors will simply accelerate those ideas and that progress. So I thank you all very much for all that you're doing. And so we'll entertain a motion for adjournment to our next meeting. April 15th is normally tax day, but that's a Sunday. It is Emancipation Day in the District of Columbia on the 16th of, or on the, no, I guess, yeah, the 16th. And so tax day is not until the 17th. So don't let that be your excuse not to be at this meeting. All in favor of, yes, a motion for adjournment. All in favor, or if there's a motion for adjournment? So moved by Commissioner Baker, second by Commissioner Goins. All in favor say yes. Yes. And we are adjourned. I didn't call for it. No.